Jeremiah Smith's not even the best freshman receiver out there today, which is funny.
Not for him.
Ryan Williams. 1,000%.
Now, compare stats right now.
No. Hey, like I said, I'll let the comments take care of you. Earlier this week, I posted a reel about Ryan Williams being better than Jeremiah Smith. And let me tell you, you guys destroyed me in the comments. It is by far the best video we've ever done, and you guys were demanding me to have a response video for this. Two things I want to say up front. Number one, no, this is not clickbait. When I first created this platform, which has only been a month, by the way, I made it clear to the team and all the co hosts that we're not going to purposely give out bad takes. If it just so happens and things go viral, then we should be confident enough to defend our takes. And the second thing that I'll say is that I welcome comments. I think it's great. I think part of what we're trying to do for this platform is actually make this more of a community thing to where it's an extension of our content to you guys as the audience. So when you guys comment and make your opinions, not only do we make it a point to respond and give our takes and defend it and everything, but also we messaged a lot of you guys and we also want to feature you on the show. It's part of our way of giving thanks to you guys for supporting our content, but also it's sports. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be banter. It's supposed to be like this. I'm never going to sit on the high horse and say that I'm 100% right or you guys are always 100% wrong or anything like that. I am willing to change my mind if there's a good enough argument. And with that being said, I'm willing to shout you out if you give me good evidence and make a firm argument. So, with that being said, I just want to say thank you for all the support that we've been getting. We greatly appreciate it. And then keep them coming. We post every single day on Instagram. And then we post a video every Thursday and every Sunday. And then Sunday, we specifically have our audience led segment where we directly read your comments and then respond to it. With that being said, I want you guys to actually stick around to the end of the video because I have some very interesting news that was given to me by one of the audience members about Ryan Williams, and I'll share it with you. I realize now that a lot of you guys will be watching our content for the first time. So let me introduce myself. Welcome to the social club where everyone has a voice. I am your host, Jacob, and I'm here to talk about why Ryan Williams is better than Jeremiah Smith. If you guys haven't done so already, go ahead and subscribe to us on YouTube and also follow us on Instagram where we post content every single day. All right, with all that out of the way, you guys wanted me to talk about the stats, so okay, let's talk about the stats. Now, a couple things I want to state first before starting the argument is that in this argument, I am not going to count any bowl games or playoff games. And I do that for one major reason. Is that one, when we get in that mindset of adding playoff games and stuff, it dilutes the argument. It dilutes the argument mainly because there's a lot of argument when it comes to opt-outs, people hitting the transfer portal, people going to the league during certain bowl games. And more importantly, you can ignore it if you want, but it's very evident there is a difference of performance when you have something on the line versus when you don't, right? So while everyone does want to point out the Alabama Michigan game, and then everyone wants to add on and talk about the Jeremiah Smith playoff games, again, we don't base any rewards off of your playoff and bowl performances when it comes to best receiver, Heisman, everything like that. It's all based off of regular season stats. So because of that, I want to make this as even and unbiased as possible. So I will only be discussing everything up to the regular season stats and nothing further. With that being said, when you calculate up Jeremiah Smith's stats for the season, he has 57 receptions, 934 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Compared to Ryan Williams, who has 45 receptions, 857 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Now, it's going to say 8 touchdowns, but I also added 2 touchdowns because he also has 2 rushing touchdowns on there. If you want to take that away and just make it 8 touchdowns, that's fine, but I'd look at it more of a total production standpoint. Whatever floats you guys' boat. So the first thing I want to establish is that when you actually look at these stats, they are similar. I said that Jeremiah Smith is just light years ahead of Ryan Williams, just from a stat and production standpoint, it is very similar. Now, obviously, you guys would like to know, what am I basing this argument off of to say that Ryan Williams is better? I think a lot of their attributes are very similar. I think it's a very close argument. So let me be clear about that. Part of the reason why I like Ryan Williams more is really just from a production standpoint compared to what the rest of their offense is, right? So now you look at Ohio State and Alabama, you're like, well, Jacob, both of those teams have really high power offenses. And while I do agree with that, their schemes are completely different. Ohio State is a spread offense. Alabama is a pro style offense. What's the difference between the two? Well, it's pretty straightforward. It's that pro style offenses are more balanced to where they try a more balanced approach between passing and running scheme, where Ohio State likes to spread the ball around to their talents so they're more prone to passing it. And I think that's very evident when you consider the QBs that were throwing them the ball with Jalen Milroe versus Will Howard. So when I look at Jalen Milroe and Will Howard, what I look at is that Jalen Milroe is a dual threat QB while Will Howard is a pocket passing QB. That matters. Why does that matter? Well, you have two receivers that have similar stats when one QB, half of his responsibility is passing the ball, the other half is using his legs to get the yardage, while the other QB, his 100% of his job is to pass and to get the ball out. So comparing stats with Will Howard and Jalen Milroe. Now, again, I'm only counting regular season because, again, it wouldn't be fair if I just use Will Howard's stats along with the playoffs when he has an extra game in front of Jalen Milroe, right? So, in just looking at the regular season, Will Howard has 2,860 passing yards with 27 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. Jalen Milroe has 2,652 passing yards with 15 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. So just looking at that alone, and doing a little math on that, it's about the same to where Ryan Williams is contributing to about 32% of all of Jalen Milroe's passes, and similar to Jeremiah Smith and Will Howard, to where he's contributing about 32% of Will Howard's passing yards, right? Now, the disparity in that, why I get the edge out to Ryan Williams, is you look at the sheer touchdowns itself. Jalen Milroe has 15 touchdowns. Ryan Williams has 8 passing. That accounts for more than half of Jalen Milroe's passing touchdowns, which is insane. So over half the time Jalen Milroe has thrown a touchdown, it has gone to Ryan Williams, which, by the way, the kid's 17 years old, or at least was 17 years old for halfway through the season, which is crazy, right? Versus Will Howard, Jeremiah Smith has contributed about half of the TDs, a little under half of the TDs that Will Howard has thrown to, which is still great. Again, I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying why I edged out Ryan Williams in that conversation when it comes to a pure production standpoint for what that offense is doing, what he's contributing versus what Jeremiah Smith is doing and what their offense is contributing. So this is the part where everyone wants to argue like, well, what about the running backs? What about, the talent and you got to spread the talent around and everything like that. Again, the mindset that we're talking about where Alabama doesn't have a high power offense is kind of BS. Now, there's a lot of you guys that want to jump in the comments and say that, Ryan Williams has only had one good game and, we're overdoing it. This is the same Georgia team that we've seen. So what I've done was I actually looked at both of their best games and looked at both of their worst games just to compare. And both of these games, I put some parameters on it. The first thing is that it had to go against AP top 25 opponents, right? So when I analyzed that, obviously Ryan Williams' best game was Georgia, absolutely, with 6 receptions, 177 yards, and 1 touchdown. And then his worst game is actually against LSU, where he ended up with 2 receptions for 29 yards, right? So then we look at Jeremiah Smith. What is his best game? What is his worst game against top 25 opponents? Well, his best game was against Oregon, which is 9 receptions, 100 yards, and a TD. And his worst game was Indiana, where it was actually 3 receptions for 34 yards. Why am I saying this? Again, I want to drive the point home that me saying that he's better is not as crazy as you think. It's a lot closer of a metric once you actually look at these stats and how everything's going. And I'll even do you one better. So I actually looked at the stats between AP top 25 opponents, right? Now, when I did the AP top 25 opponents, I also added in teams that were ranked when they faced them, right? To keep it fair. Because if I look back now and I look at like a South Carolina, right? South Carolina is definitely a formidable opponent, but I don't think they're ranked right now currently. So because of that, I wanted to make sure teams like that were included on there. So I made sure whenever they faced that team that they were ranked for it to count. So Jeremiah Smith has only faced 3 ranked opponents, 3 teams in the AP top 25, and his average stats between them is somewhere around 5 receptions, 63 yards a game, and then he only recorded 1 touchdown and 3 in those 3 games combined. And then when we go to Ryan Williams, he averaged around 5 receptions, 72, 73 yards per game, and then 2 touchdowns out of all those games. And Alabama has faced 5 ranked opponents in the AP top 25. So there's definitely argument there that Ryan Williams has faced harder opponents. I know everyone in that metric would like to look at like defensive stats, and it's like, oh well, these SEC teams weren't ranked well defensively and stuff. I'm like, listen, if your team is ranked, your team is ranked. We're not gonna move the goalposts on to say if your team is good or not. If your team is in the ranking, that's good enough to add it into the stat. I'm not gonna go end up making this thing where we're talking about cornerback assignments and play calling that because he saw more cover 2 or whatever you guys want to throw out there, right? I'm just looking at ranked teams and I'm judging them based off of that. Now let's go to the more important part where we talk about attributes. Now, again, if you guys decide that you just want Jeremiah Smith as your receiver, that's perfectly fine. I believe this is still a close argument. However, the idea that Ryan Smith or Ryan Williams wouldn't be a clear-cut receiver one, I also think is kind of crazy. I want to clear that up, right? Now, looking at their attributes, a lot of those awards are actually pretty similar. I look back at the stuff Jeremiah Smith, had everything you can imagine: Big Ten Receiver of the Year, Freshman of the Year, first team All Big Ten, second team All American, everything of that sorts, right? And then I look at Ryan Williams. Ryan Williams again, freshman All American, first team All SEC, and also a second team All American. So it's actually pretty similar in relations to accolades and awards in that regard. Let's clear the air. Jeremiah Smith is 6'3", 215 pounds. Ryan Williams is 6 foot, 175. So they're going to be 2 different receiver comparisons with that. And if you decide you want a bigger receiver, that's fine versus a smaller receiver like a Ryan Williams. But I do want to make that disparity on their size. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith is a bigger, stronger receiver than Ryan Williams, but Ryan Williams does edge him out in other attributes, which I will go over real quick. In terms of speed, I would say it's very hard to get a reading on it until there's an official combine, just for a lot of reasons. Ryan Williams, according to my research, that he clocked in at a 4.41, and for Jeremiah Smith, I see that he clocked in at a 4.5. However, again, some people say that they were running 4.3. Some people will say that they both run 4.4 and stuff. So just to make it fair, I'll just say that their speed is relatively even. I'll just keep it clear like that. I mean, again, when you're talking about 4.5 to a 4.41, that is really the difference on how you start. I don't think it's a true test of your actual speed. So I would like to say that they're at least similar. When it goes to the route running, you guys are going to hate me for this, but I actually do edge out Ryan Williams. I do think it's close, but I like to edge it out. And the way that I assess edging it out is that I actually looked at all the times that they scored a touchdown, and then I looked at some extra videos to look at their route running and look at the highlights and stuff. Now, by all means, I'm not some head coach guru or anything like that. I actually encourage you just check out all of their touchdowns and how they were able to get to those touchdowns. And when I look at Ryan Williams, I'm like, hey, listen, his route running is very polished. It's very good. It's not like this is him against Mercer doing this. He's actually doing this against real opponents, right? Which I kind of give it away, but also with separation, I would also give it to Ryan Williams. And I think it makes sense when you think about it. I mean, just Jeremiah Smith is just a bigger target. So obviously, from a DB standpoint, you would have a better job at least staying with the guy. Now, if you're going to deflect the pass, that's a little bit different. We'll talk about that later. But Ryan Williams is definitely a quicker guy than Jeremiah Smith. So it makes sense how his ability to separate will be better, along with the fact that he has a very polished route running skill set. Catching ability, I would say it's dead even. If you want to argue that Jeremiah Smith has it slightly better, I really don't mind it, but I think it's around even. I've seen enough spectacular catches from both of them to say that anywhere you can get the ball, they'll have the ability to catch it. In terms of athleticism, this one's kind of tough. The only true way to understand athleticism will really be if we had like their weight room stats and was able to and we're able to like read that out versus how fast they are and stuff. Like, obviously, you're an athlete if you can hang clean 405, but also run like a 4.40, But it's very hard to tell. It's very hard to tell the difference just by looking at game film. Personally, for me, the only way that I can tell the difference and what I'm going to judge it on, it's just based off of how much they are involved in the actual game and what they're able to do. So both of them have had moments to where they were given the ball to actually rush, and their stats are actually relatively similar. Ryan Williams edges it out with 2 rushing TDs along with that. But also, I want to edge out the athleticism to Ryan Williams because also he is a punt returner, which Jeremiah Smith has not, at least at this point, gone back to receive a punt. Now, again, I don't really have a good way to tell between athleticism, but the best way I can describe it is to just say something like that. The production on the field and how many different places you are picked and plugged to do certain things. They're both receivers. They both have the ability to run the ball and have gotten those opportunities to carry the ball. But Ryan Williams has 2 rushing touchdowns, and then also he is a punt returner. So I'll give it to him. In terms of a deep threat, I'm going to give it to Jeremiah Smith on this one. And I think it's pretty straightforward. He's just a bigger body. And if your hands are even, if everything else kind of evens out the way that I've been describing here, then of course, you're 6'3", you are going to be a deep threat and you are going to have a better ability to make spectacular catches. And for what I've seen, he does make more spectacular catches. Now, I don't think Ryan Williams couldn't make those catches, but I gotta call the film like I call the film. So I'll definitely give it to Jeremiah Smith. They is a better deep threat than Ryan Williams. And the last thing I'll say, let's just discuss the age thing real quick because people are trying to say that it doesn't matter. I just want to make it clear to understand why it does matter. So they're both freshmen, right? The difference is Ryan Williams was 17 years old and Jeremiah Smith is now 19 years old. So I actually looked up the dates and they're about 15 months in difference of age between each other. Now, the reason why Ryan Williams, him being 17 years old, and again, having similar stats to Jeremiah Smith, who is 19 years old, is from the age 17 to 19, and really from 17 to 24, is some of the biggest difference in your body composition that you'll have in your life, right? So when people say it doesn't matter, yeah, it wouldn't matter if you're 24 to a 26-year-old. It won't be that big of a difference, right? But from a 17 to a 19-year-old, there's a major difference because, again, your body in that time changes so rapidly compared to older or younger times in your life, right? So for Ryan Williams to have similar production to Jeremiah Smith at a younger age is more impressive, even though they're both classified as true freshmen. And if you don't believe me, what I'll tell you to do is look at a picture of yourself when you were 17 years old, then look at a picture of yourself when you were 19 years old and compare the difference. And you can obviously tell, even if you weren't in a sport, that your body just changes. And that's perfectly fine. So the funny thing is that I can really make this argument into what will Ryan Williams' stats be when he's 19 years old. Funny enough, you really can make that argument because your body just changes that much. That's why I say that does matter. I'm not saying that's the whole argument, but it's important enough to state that when it comes to ages, and especially again when you extend that further to the competition that you're going against. You're a 17-year-old going against potentially 23, 24-year-olds, and it's the same thing for Jeremiah Smith. However, again, he has him by 15 months, and that is an advantage. So the last point of this video, I want to talk about the receiver conversation. A lot of people believe that Jeremiah Smith is the best receiver in college. While I do believe that there's an argument for that, I also think that we are a fan of recency bias. Before Jeremiah Smith, everyone was raving about McMillan. And when you look at McMillan's 6'4", 200 pounds, 84 yards receiving, 1,300 yards catching, and 8 touchdowns all in the regular season on a not that good Arizona team, right? So again, when we talk about receivers in the realms of freaks of nature, Jeremiah Smith is definitely a top receiver. I'm fine with that. But to say that he's the number one receiver right now, I think that's a lot of recency bias, to be honest with you. And then also, again, I also want to advocate for Travis Hunter too, because a lot of you guys were very annoyed that Travis Hunter won the Heisman, and you thought Ashton Genty should win because of stats and everything like that. But even when you look at Travis Hunter, 92 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 14 touchdowns, right? And this is all in the regular season, by the way. But you compare that with Jeremiah Smith. It's like clearly he's had way better production against Jeremiah Smith, on top of playing all the snaps at the cornerback position, right? So again, this throws it back to you guys to where it's like, all right, well, I went over the stats to show you that it's similar. If you want to bark at me that the stats don't matter and everything like that, then fine, fine. Go ahead. Keep it like that, right? But also then don't say that he's the best receiver in college football right now, because again, once you look at those same stats, you'll realize that Travis Hunter and McMillan clears him from a stat standpoint on what they're able to do versus what Jeremiah Smith has done. Which again, no discredit to the guy. I like him, and I think it's a great argument. But again, we got to look at this objectively, right? So you got to figure out what is your argument, how are you going to frame this, and then you just got to stick with it, right? Don't just flip flop, go left and right, just because it's a different opinion or it's a different conversation that's being had, right? Another thing I want to address: a lot of people are comparing Jeremiah Smith to Julio Jones and then Ryan Williams to a Devontae Smith. The only thing I'll say with that is, again, if you look at their careers, obviously you can see that while Julio Jones is a freak athlete, and is a crazy specimen, Devontae Smith had way better production than he did, right? Now, you can say, hey, if I'm starting the team, I want Julio Jones. That's perfectly fine. But in the argument to say that it'd be crazy for me to say Devontae Smith was better than Julio Jones, and I laid down the argument for it, that's not a crazy take. And I think it's the same thing with this. We look at height and size and freaks of nature from a specimen standpoint. We get all giddy and crazy, and I get it, right? But also, again, you can make objective, reasonable decisions based off of the stats and what you see in the game, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Now I'm done with that. Definitely comment down below. Let me know what your thoughts are and what I think. Do you think I'm still crazy for my take? Obviously, I don't, but let your voice be heard. I'll definitely respond to what you guys got for me. But since you made it to the end, I will give you the crazy news that I heard about in regards to Ryan Williams. But before I do that, I want to show some love to the audience member that sent me this article. So I do want to shout out Matthew Leor. Definitely show him some love. Matthew sent me this article, and what the article says is Alabama wide receiver Ryan Williams will transfer to Ohio State. And then further on in that article, they proceed to state their case of why they believe that Ryan Williams will then transfer to Ohio State. Wanting to be produced the right way to be an NFL receiver, the mess of DeBoer's first year coaching at Alabama and everything of that nature, right? So the big bombshell is that there's a very large chance that Ryan Williams will actually be suiting up for Ohio State. So now it'll be Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams on the same team. I want to know right now. Comment down below what you think. How crazy of a duel will that be if that actually happens? But if it does happen, you heard it here first. I wanted to make sure I was the first one to get that out. For now, I will say it's rumors because I don't have any ESPN, defined notification, anything like that. So we'll just have to see. But that's the rumor I got, man. And anything could happen. So, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. Definitely comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. If you think I'm crazy, you think I need more, I'll definitely have more videos just shouting out the audience members and reading their comments and defending myself. And then other than that, take care, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.